Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Meredith Duncan, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant David Elliott. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families who support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. Also this evening, wreaths will be laid by visitors as well as students on behalf of the following schools. From Western Australia, Wanneroo Primary Independent Public School. From Tasmania, Penguin District School. From New South Wales, Samuel Terry Public School, Cranbrook. Cambridge Gardens Public School, Cambridge Park, and Avondale School, Coonrabong. Will you please stand now and join in singing the National Anthem? You may be seated, boys and girls. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private William Arthur Ives. William Ives was born in 1890 to Walter and Alice Ives of Eaglehawk, Victoria. He grew up in and around Bendigo and attended the local state school. When he was 14, William, his cousin Arthur and friend Robert Sayer got into trouble for shooting at a cart after a conversation with the driver. Only the 12-year-old Sayer was charged and he received a minimal punishment, the judge calling the three a group of careless boys and saying that that day should be a lesson that would be remembered. Not only boys but men were too prone to take up firearms and handle them carelessly. Ives went on to become a gold miner in the California Gully district. He enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in July 1915. On the 21st of August, roughly 6 weeks after his enlistment, he married Christina Munro in St John's Church in Footscray. Less than 3 weeks later, Ives' son, William Arthur Ives Jr., was born. Ives continued training and left Melbourne in January 1916 on board the troop ship Themistocles. Private Ives arrived in Egypt and continued training with the 6th Battalion. He was then sent to France to serve on the Western Front. Later that year, he spent some time seconded to the 1st Canadian Tunnelling Company. He spent much of the bitterly cold winter in 1916-17 rotating in and out of the front line, which caused his health to deteriorate. He spent months in hospital undergoing treatment for trench fever, conjunctivitis and tonsillitis. In July 1917, a man called Jack Griffiths visited William Ives' parents in Bendigo, falsely claiming that their son had died of illness in hospital. Mrs. Ives remained convinced her son was fine, and she wrote to the authorities to try to put a stop to the trouble and anxiety this man caused me. Whatever Jack Griffiths' motives, Ives continued to improve under treatment, and by early 1918, his health had improved enough that he was able to spend a solid block of time with the battalion, which in late April was in Divisional Reserve near Hazebrouck in France. Heavy shell fire was brought to bear on the area by the German army, and it struck the dugout in which Ives sheltered. He and another man were killed instantly in the blast. His platoon commander later wrote to Ives' wife, "Your late husband has been in my platoon for some time, and I was with him when he met his death. I felt his loss keenly, and he was always a fine soldier, a brave man who always did his duty, and the boys also wish me to mention that they lost a good pal when your husband died." William Ives was buried in the nearby village of Caester. He was 28 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died during the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private William Arthur Ives, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and I wish you a very good evening.